Welcome to Money Moments with Friends. In today's episode, we're joined by Toya and Teddy Johnson, and we're talking about paying off debt and creating generational wealth. We open up with the why. Working in community development finance for about 14 years now. But
Okay.
earlier, well, let me back up a little bit. I started my career in finance at a local CDFI, which is Community Development Financial Institution, basically a credit union. Then
Okay.
I spent a couple of years in the nonprofit space. Well, now I work for a national bank in community development finance. So I'm not touching people the way I used to. So I've
hmm
been with the bank a little over 4 years. So earlier this year in February, of course, pre-COVID, I was like, I kind of want to start my own little thing, touching people's personal finances. So I created the Cardigan Banker. And
Okay.
so the Cardigan Banker was supposed to be a series of in-person workshops, kind of designed just to get you to take control of your finances at whatever stage you're in. I basically talk about savings and budgeting, and I touch on a little bit of credit. I will say a lot of these credit repair companies that have kind of come into the space, they kind of disrupted that a little bit because people will contact me and say, "Can you fix my credit?" The same way I can't manage your household bills for you, the same way I can't fix your credit. You have to manage, your own credit processes. So that's a little bit about me and kind of why we're doing this video, because of course with everyone else in COVID, I've had to pivot. So this has me in front of a camera. This has me doing things virtually, a totally new space that I should be used to it. My undergrad degree is journalism and mass comm, but I haven't done anything in that arena in so many years. I'm just, like I said, kind of feeling my way around. So I do want to hear a little bit about you guys and your professions. I hear you in finance, Teddy.
Yes, I am. Not as extensive as your background, but I did start in. Actually, my first job out of school was finance control for McDonald's headquarters in Germany. I kind of grew up in Germany as a military brat, and I have siblings that still live there. So that's why I actually ended up going there. And then after that, worked at a casino for a little bit, and then personal banking at a bank, and then ultimately found my way back into finance about 4 years ago from insurance um, with the government. So now I do financial management for the Department of Defense.
Okay, cool. And Soy, I know a little bit about your background, but tell me a little bit about, why did you choose that profession?
So initially, I've been in the military now for 10 years. Initially, I wasn't medical, but I switched over 3 years ago at this point. And so now I'm a physician assistant. So still in the military, but basically a provider for military members.
I like to ask people, what was their first memory of money? This could be, my mom gave me a piggy bank. I remember my mom saying we didn't have enough money for X. Just what was your first memory or concept of money?
My first memory was I would just sneak and look at my dad's bank receipts whenever he'd go to ATM and stuff like that. So I would use those as arguments when he couldn't told me I couldn't get candy from the store and stuff. But like, we rich, you got this much money in the bank. He'd be like, "What you been looking at?" So those memories. Those are the first memories I have about money.
I just remember that we didn't have it. And I didn't know that at first that we didn't have it until I started going to school outside of my community. So I went from Central Elementary to Bellevue Elementary, so predominantly Black to predominantly white. And it wasn't until I switched schools that I realized, oh, I don't have the kind of stuff they have. We don't drive the kind of cars they drive. We don't live how they live. But even then, it wasn't really a problem still, but it was like, oh, okay, this is what money looks like, and we don't have it.
Important is creating generational wealth for you guys. I know your parents, you have two small children. How important is creating that legacy for you guys?
So for me, I feel like it's the single most important thing that we can do for our kids. I feel like it's also our responsibility. Looking back at the experiences that he and I have, we didn't get that information and we didn't have that legacy kind of left down for us. There was no wealth for us, and no fault to our parents, but they can't teach or leave what they don't know and what they don't have. So it's important. It's been important for both of us because we do have children and we won't be here forever. And what is our legacy going to be when we're gone? And what can we do to try to help make our kids' lives a little bit better than ours? Because that's always the goal as any parent. You want to do a little bit better for them than what you had, and hopefully they'll continue to carry on that same tradition.
Yeah. And at this point, like being out of debt, like that's our main focus right now. This is what keeps me up at night. I'm like, all right, what's the Dave Ramsey version of building a trust, and what are the baby steps to making sure our generations after us are taken care of? So I haven't found that yet. It's kind of like you got to piece it together yourself. But the main thing that I really want to make sure that we give to our kids is how to build wealth, not just give them wealth, not just hand them a paycheck or this lump sum of money. Like they need to understand how this was built and how to grow it, because now they're going to be the stewards to give it to their kids and hopefully continue that. So if they don't know the knowledge and the sacrifice that it took to get to that point, they're just going to squander it. And so that's one of my main focuses. We want to make sure we're protected and there's a trust, but also want the kids to understand the importance and how we did that.
And, it's so funny that you say, about trust and advanced directive living wills. That's another, because I'm an African-American person. That's how I identify myself. So for me, I definitely have a special place in my heart for wanting to see us win, wanting to see us build wealth within our communities. But a lot of those things that you mentioned, it's just unheard of. I'm sure there are grown people who have never heard the word trust. Because where do you hear about trust? From people who have trust, right? Unless you go to a seminar or something like that, where an attorney is trying to sell you a package on something, you don't hear about trust. But because I was in the finance space for so many years, I got to touch poor people, rich people, people of all different income brackets. So for me, that's definitely a huge benefit and something that I want to pass down to my kids and other people as well. How did it start? Who did what? Yeah.
All right, so I'll take it first, and then I'll let Teddy piggyback off of it. So we had heard about Dave Ramsey years ago, maybe even dating back to like 2013. We had heard about like Snowball, and it was from like a few people, maybe at least two that I know of that told me. I'm not sure who he heard of. At that point, there was still the envelope system. So I was like, yeah, I'm not walking around with envelopes. So not doing that. Didn't really take it serious. And then the people that were telling us about it also weren't really like gung-ho on it, going hard with it. They just kind of mentioned it in passing. So we never saw an example of start to finish. And I don't think at that point we were ready to make a change. It's nice talking about doing something, but to actually start implementing it, I don't think we were ready until we actually did it. And then I'll go on to say, Teddy, being the finance guy, he really does run the finances in the house. So I kind of followed his lead on a lot of stuff. And when we first got started, he had talked about it again with some of his frat brothers. And he was like, yeah, I want to read the book. We got to find the book. And me being the cheap person in a relationship, I was like Googling, I was like, let me find this book online because I'm not even about to pay for it. So I ended up finding a PDF version of the book. And we started reading the book together out loud to each other, and then I'll let Teddy take it from there.
Yeah, as she mentioned, there were people who told us about it in our past, but like she said, we were not ready because we felt like we had a good handle on our finances, and we did. We weren't in debt. We were able to pay we were in debt, but we were able to manage the payments. And so to us, we didn't have a problem. It wasn't like we were skipping or having to live. We didn't think we were living paycheck to paycheck, but we really were, because we did not have a savings. We were just able to afford everything when it was all said and done. But one of the things that sparked it for me, I actually took a trip with my frat brothers to Vegas. And we all know Vegas is glitzy, flashy. I've never seen so much money being blown on wasteless things. And I was participating too. We were buying sections, we were doing all that, having a good time. And I was just asking everybody, I was like, we're pretty mature in our early stages of our careers, but pretty established at this point. I was like, what are y'all doing with y'all money? Are y'all savings? Do y'all, like, how are you guys doing this? Because I feel like I'm okay, but I've seen some long money in Vegas, and some of y'all were the ones. So like, what are y'all doing that I need to be doing as well? And everybody's like, well, I do Dave Ramsey or a few people to get out of the debt. And then from there, I just invest. So there were some investment project options thrown out there. And then Dave Ramsey repeatedly kept coming up. They're like, if you're in debt, do the Dave Ramsey program. Latoya, she found the book, we read it, and we were hooked. Like, debt as something, owing people is something that I've always hated. Like, I don't like to owe anybody anything. I pay my debts. But the student loans was just so large. I was just like, there's no way. But reading this book and the steps, I was like, oh yeah, there is a plan. And in fact, we can do it fairly quick. Instead of doing that 10-year debt forgiveness, let's do 2 or 3 years and be done with it.
The day we started reading the book, I had just bought a brand new, this was in 2000, so we started our journey in October of 2018, actually September. I had just purchased a brand new Tahoe, laid out, decked out. That was my thing. I was ready to go. In my mind, I earned it, I deserved it. Like, we work hard, we're here now. I just graduated from school, like, let's treat myself. So we started reading the book, and it was like 3 days after getting the car. And one of the first chapters is about auto loan debt. And so Teddy had already made up his mind. He was like, at that time he had a 2015.
A C300, a Mercedes C300.
He had a Mercedes, fairly new. And he was like, yeah, I'm gonna trade my car in and get a Dave Ramsey car, which is basically your beater car to last until you get out of debt. We already knew we weren't about to get any hoopies. So we kind of adjusted some things, and we could talk about that a little later, but we kind of adjusted things to fit our lifestyle, but also still get us to the end goal. But so I was so down from what I read, because at first I was still a little skeptical, like, okay, we'll read the book. But once you get into the book, one, it's a really easy read, and two, it has examples of like everyday people. And you're like, oh, that sounds like us. Or remember when we did that same thing? Or we thought
people making less money than us and achieving more and paying off more in their debt. I'm like, if they could do it with less, we should easily be able to do it.
So when I started reading, I was sold. I was like, okay, this is something tangible. This is something we can do. So I was like, I'm turning my car in. So that same weekend, like 5 days old, I went around trying to sell my car back. And one, that process kind of solidified everything that he said in the book, how much we waste time and value. Within 5 days of having the car, they were already depreciating it $12,000 under what I owed for it. Right. So long story short, we ended up trading in both of our cars. We had my car brand new was like $54,000. His car wasn't new anymore, but he still owed like $28,000. So we had like $80,000 in car loans. Sounds good. We could make our payments, no problem. But that's a lot of money that's a mini house. Right. So we traded in both of our cars, and we got a $32,000 personal loan from the bank. So we used the $32,000 to completely pay off our negative equity that we had in the cars. And then we used the rest. What do we have, 12,000 left?
Yeah, about 12.
We had $12,000 left out of the 32 from the negative equity, and that's what we used to purchase our Dave Ramsey cars.
Which are two Prius, which are the best cars ever made. We still have hers.
And we weren't going for that. Yeah. It just we both ended up getting the same kind of car. Mine was older. I have a 2007 Prius. That's still what I drive to this day. I have not had any issues with the car.
I love that car.
He wrecked his.
Yeah, I hit a deer.
He hit a deer out in Texas, but after that, he still got another beat. So the money he got back from the car immediately went to another car. We haven't paid anything else out of pocket. So the $32,000 loan was the first thing that we completely paid off. So we went immediately within like the first 6 months, we went from $80,000 of debt to nothing. We immediately wiped out $80,000 just by trading in our cars. So that was an immediate, okay, we're like a third of the way through.
Yeah. 80 from 80 to 32.
But then we got rid of the 32 within like 6 months. Just to list our debts, we had our student loans, which together was about $100,000, right? $110,000. Of course, we went to private HBCUs, big ups HBCUs, but they don't. I mean, there's ways to get money, and looking back now, we could have done more to get more scholarships. These are private institutions, and we actually had partial scholarships.
We both had scholarships.
We still left with $100,000 plus in loans. So we had that, and then we had our house. The biggest part of that is the budget. We had always had a budget before because he's finance savvy, but we were using it more retroactively, like, okay, this is what we spent this month. It just kind of writing down things that happened instead of writing down what we wanted to happen and kind of really managing our money. We were using it just as a tool for tracking, like, yeah, that's where it went. But we weren't really
go into the negative.
Right. We weren't really telling our money where to go. And that's one thing that's
just
really
finding out at the end of the month, we spent $2,000 on food between it was just two of us, three of us at the time. Yeah. So I was like, yeah, this is ridiculous. Like we're blowing money and it doesn't even seem like it because we're not getting anything material from it. Most of our money went to either like groceries was a lot. And then the rest would just slip through our hands, and then of course our bills. Like those were the material ones, but once we got rid of those cars, it was like that freed up $1,300.
Yeah. So, first step is the budget. Once you get your budget, and the thing is to make it realistic, look at your past few months, go a few months back, probably like 6 months, average out what you're actually spending. Don't try to make a budget based on what you think you're gonna do. Make a budget based on what your patterns have shown. So we saw how much we were spending on average for food, for gas. So we made a realistic budget. And then we also decided to keep some spending money, if you will, to let ourselves not be as restricted. Because the more restrictive you are, just like with anything else, you're gonna fail at it. You're gonna wanna cheat, you're gonna wanna do this and that. So we made it realistic for us, something that we knew we could follow. And that's what really kind of held us accountable and things like that. So the first step and the most important step is the budget. Once you get the budget and you really—
$1,000 savings. We saved that too. We had that saved.
Yeah, you need an emergency fund because if it can happen, it will.
Something that Teddy said earlier about the Vegas trip, about him starting the conversation about money, I actually consider that to be you guys' first step, because your first step is actually acknowledging, I want to do something a little bit different with my money. Mm-hmm. And then it's kind of like you typically will start the process of diving in. Okay, what do I want to do differently? Do I need an emergency fund? Do I just want to trim expenses? Do I want to invest? Do I want to save for the future? And in you guys' examples, it was getting rid of those cars and seeing that huge win, and you were hooked after that.
Right. After that, it was like, okay, we could do it. Let's keep going. We're almost there now. And then when we started paying off the school loans, because we were both in the mindset beforehand, just like everybody else in America, defer. If I could defer it a little bit longer, defer, and give me a forbearance somewhere in there. But when you really take the time to look at these statements that they're sending you, you start seeing like, wait, I'm paying $100 a month in interest? Like, and that's on the one.
But my total payment is only $200 or $150.
I bought several houses through my college degree.
Right.
I've just bought like a $200,000 house.
And still haven't paid off the loan.
Still have not paid off my loan.
So if you actually look at your numbers and see that by the end of your $15,000 loan, you've actually paid these people like $30,000 plus. It's ridiculous how much they're doing. And if you're not looking at your statements, you would never be the wiser. Because if mine is in deferment, well, I don't need the statement. I know I don't have to pay it. Throw it away. I wasn't even looking at statements.
Right.
And that's important because that helps put a little fire under your butt when you realize that you literally throwing your money away. Right. You're paying for this. Spelman didn't educate me that much that I need to be double paying my loans.
Right, exactly.
So that was kind of the fire to make sure that we continue on getting the loans paid off. Another thing that put fire under our butt was when I could have potentially gotten out of the military. So it was like, all right, what is our plan for the future? If we continue and make sure we get out of debt, then that kind of frees up some stuff where we're not going to be scrapped for cash. We have more time. It kind of gave us a cushion, knowing that as long as we're out of debt, even if I'm just working part-time or doing whatever.
Less money than us in accomplishing and achieving more and paying off more in their debt. I'm like, if they could do it with less, we should easily be able to do it.
So when I started reading, I was sold. I was like, okay, this is something tangible. This is something we can do. So I was like, I'm turning my car in. So that same weekend, like 5 days old, I went around trying to sell my car back. And that process kind of solidified everything that he said in the book, how much we waste time and value. Within 5 days of having the car, they were already depreciating it $12,000 under what I owed for it.
Right.
So long story short, we ended up trading in both of our cars. We had my car brand new was like $54,000. His car wasn't new anymore, but he still owed like $28,000. So we had like $80,000 in car loans. Sounds good. We could make our payments, no problem. But that's a lot of money that's a mini house. Right. So we traded in both of our cars and we got a $32,000 personal loan from the bank. So we used the $32,000 to completely pay off our negative equity that we had in the cars. And then we used the rest. What do we have, 12,000 left?
Yeah, about 12.
We had $12,000 left out of the 32 from the negative equity, and that's what we used to purchase our Dave Ramsey cars.
Which are two Prius, which are the best cars ever made. We still have hers.
And we weren't going for that. Yeah. It just we both ended up getting the same kind of car. Mine was older. I have a 2007 Prius. That's still what I drive to this day. I have not had any issues with the car.
I love that car.
He wrecked his.
Yeah, I hit a deer.
He hit a deer out in Texas, but after that, he still got another beat. So the money he got back from the car immediately went to another car. We haven't paid anything else out of pocket. So the $32,000 loan was the first thing that we completely paid off. So we went immediately within like the first 6 months, we went from $80,000 of debt to nothing. We immediately wiped out $80,000 just by trading in our cars. So that was an immediate, okay, we're like a third of the way through.
Yeah. From 80 to 32.
But then we got rid of the 32 within like 6 months.
Yeah.
And then the second thing we had, just to list our debts, we had our student loans, which together was about $100,000, right? $110,000. Of course, we went to private HBCUs, big ups HBCUs, but they don't. I mean, there's ways to get money, and looking back now, we could have done more to get more scholarships, but these are private institutions, and we actually had partial scholarships.
We both had scholarships.
We still left with $100,000 plus in loans. So we had that, and then we had our house. So following the Dave Ramsey plan, which the biggest part of that is the budget. We had always had a budget before because he's finance savvy, but we were using it more retroactively, like, okay, this is what we spent this month. And just kind of writing down things that happened instead of writing down what we wanted to happen and kind of really managing our money. We were using it just as a tool for tracking. Like, that's where it went. But we weren't really
go into the negative.
Right. We weren't really telling our money where to go. And that's one thing that's
just
really
finding
big.
out at the end of the month, we spent $2,000 on food it was just two of us, three of us at the time. Yeah. So I was like, this is ridiculous. Like we're blowing money and it doesn't even seem like it because we're not getting anything material from it. Most of our money went to either like groceries was a lot. And then the rest would just slip through our hands, and then of course our bills. Like those were the material ones. But once we got rid of those cars, it was like that freed up $1,300.
Yeah.
So, 13.
The biggest thing
$1,200 a
with
month,
what we did,
just getting rid of the cars.
The first step is the budget. Once you get your budget, and the thing is to make it realistic, look at your past few months, go a few months back, probably like 6 months, average out what you're actually spending. Don't try to make a budget based on what you think you're gonna do. Make a budget based on what your patterns have shown. So we saw how much we were spending on average for food, for gas. So we made a realistic budget. And then we also decided to keep some spending money, if you will, to let ourselves not be as restricted, because the more restrictive you are, just like with anything else, you're going to fail at it. You're going to want to cheat. You're going to want to do this and that. So we made it realistic for us, something that we knew we could follow. And that's what really kind of held us accountable and things like that. So the first step and the most important step is the budget. Once you get the budget and you really
$1,000 savings. We saved that too. We had that saved.
Yeah, you need an emergency fund, because if it can happen, it will.
Because we didn't have to sell the house to get out of debt. Based on our schedule and what we were doing, we were going to hit it either way, whether we stayed in the house or not. But selling the house actually helped us do it quicker and establish our 6-month emergency. So with the COVID going on, housing market kind of jumped up a little bit more than average. So we took advantage of that and we sold our house. I remember our neighbors listed their house. Theirs was like maybe 80 or 90 square feet smaller than ours. They listed their house for $15,000 less than what we sold our house from just a month before. So they sold their house a month before us. April? Was it probably April, May?
April, May, yeah.
Oh, so maybe 2 months before us. So they sold their house in May, and then 2 months later, we sold our house for $15,000 more than what they sold theirs for, and they were very comparable. They were right next door to each other, and 80 square foot difference. It shouldn't have been a $15,000 difference in price. It was just that the market was booming like that. But that helped us take care of the last like 10,000, and also set us up for our 6-month emergency once we got done.
I'm just going to jump in and say, because I know a lot of people are all on this real estate right now and everybody wants to get extra income. The reason we didn't go that route, because we could have rented out our house, it's not really extra income if you still owe people money.
Right.
So if you're making $600, $700 a month extra because you have a rental property, but that money is just going straight to other bills, you're not really making any extra income. So instead of going that route where we got a few extra $100 a month that still had to go toward debt, we just decided to sell the house. It helped us pay off the rest of our loan a little bit faster. And then it also helped to fund our next step in the debt-free program, which was building our 6-month emergency fund. So now if we don't have any jobs now for the next 6 months, we're covered. And that's better than saying, oh, I got an extra $600 or $700 coming in from a rental property. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think a lot of people prematurely go into this rental status because everybody wants to be a boss, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, but it's still, it's steps and it's levels that you should follow. If you're still paying off debt, you don't have extra income.
Right.
You have extra money to put toward debt.
Right. You can't, my favorite slang that I try to tell my cousins that I'm trying to get on board and stuff, I was like, you can't build a mountain in a crater. So if you talking about how, my net worth is this much, gotta have these properties. Okay, well, how much do you own those properties? If you have $1 million net worth because you have but you have $800,000 in debt, now you really only have $200,000. So I was like, and you have to sell all that. You're losing all that. So what is your true net worth? And most people have a negative net worth. And one of the biggest things that we accomplish, but they have things to show. They have a high income, making 6 figures, but you owe more than that 1 year's check in debt, So like, do you have a positive net worth? And that's what the number I'll gauge by how stable you are. What's your net worth after all your debts, all your assets? What do you have to show? What is your value? What do you have to pass on? So that, again, selling the house was like a no-brainer for us. And we're military, we move a lot. Plus, it was a nicer house that I would have felt some kind of way if I come back and it's not being taken care of like I would expect it to. And the margin would have been very thin if we had to do a management company. The accountability part was reading the book together, making sure we both got the same information. That was probably the most important part, is that we were on the same page. not just figuratively, but literally, we were reading the chapters together.
We had a book club at home.
Right. And then the budget, I would tell Toya, all right, this month you do the budget. Next month I'll do the budget. But every day we're updating our expenses. So every day at any point, you can go in there and find out exactly how much we spent in each or any category. So that was very important. And then sharing our story, telling our friends what we're doing in detail, how much we took care of and how much we got to go, what's our timeline, sharing as much information as possible to motivate them, just like the stories in the book did. So that was another important aspect of it.
Like Teddy said, especially with him being the finance person in the relationship, it's important for me. I still don't really care, but I know it's important to him, and it's important overall for us as a couple to make sure we stay on the same page. So I'm not as tedious as him. I'm not checking the bank account all day like he does, but I do go in there every now and then. You got to make sure you know what's going on. And every relationship seems to have that. One person is the money person, one person isn't. And it's not always man, woman, it could be reversed. But it's important for the less financial minded person to be just as aware of what's going on, so that, again, stay on the same page, make sure that everybody knows the same information and everybody's still working toward the same goal. It's also important to make sure that you're continuing to update your goals, because things continue to change. And that's helped to keep us accountable, because as we reach this goal, okay, what's the next goal, so that we can stay accountable, make sure we're still on the same page. Because now we're debt free, but our journey isn't over. There's still steps and things, because now we're trying to set up the generational wealth. Right. So now we're looking at our goals. I think we just sat down like a week. As soon as we posted that, the post about the debt free, that same weekend we got on there. We have a whiteboard now where we're tracking our goals and things like that. So now it's like, okay, what are our next goals? Let's look a few months ahead and figure out what are we gonna do to reach those goals.
It's goals and dreams. Like, they're not just like, oh, we gotta set up a trust fund. They're like, oh, we wanna finance our vacation, for like our all-inclusive vacation, or the next car we get. They're goals, but they're also dreams that we never thought we would be able to accomplish. I never thought I'd be able to own a car. It wasn't really a concern of mine, because I was okay with making payments. Right. But now that I know that I can achieve it, like, I literally own this thing in my garage, like, this is mine, I can go sell it. And now that I don't have debt, I'm like, okay, I'm free. Like, my shoulders aren't carrying as much weight. But now we're dreaming together as well, and setting our goals. They're part of them are dreams. Some of them are financial goals, but mostly we're dreaming now. And that still
holds you accountable, because like I said, the more you update what's going on, you're still actively working toward something. So the journey really never ends, and you should still make sure that you're staying financially ready. And then the last thing, as far as what are we doing for the community, important that we share that information to other people, because the thing that got us started was feeling like we could relate to the stories that we heard about, and it seemed tangible because everything seemed relatable. The people on my Facebook page, like, you guys know me, I'm not a fake account. Like, people on Instagram know me, like, oh, Toya from the hood can get out of debt, I can get out of debt. You know what I'm saying? So I think that was important for both of us to make sure that we reach out and let people know that real people just like you and me can do it too. They did, and now you know somebody who did it, because we knew a lot of people who were doing it, but we don't know anybody who's done it.
Right.
So